Welcome back to my channel. I'm Patient Advocate Monica. But before we get started with today's video, make sure you subscribe to my channel for weekly updates. I have a playlist on knowledge is power, food for medicine, fitness, telehealth, my personal travel therapy, and my documentary. Today's video I am so excited about because I am doing a book review. This is the book that I am reviewing by Marz Bishop, The Fight in You. Are you willing to accept the challenge? It's a great book. I met him 2 years ago at an event in Atlanta, and ever since then I've connected with him. And I've had this book before. I purchased this book before and I gave it away to another warrior that I think needed some encouragement, so I gave my book away, so I reordered the book. And I also asked Marz to sign it for me, and he did. Thank you, Marz. He signed it for me. And The Fight in You, just the title alone itself made me get this book, because there are moments when I'm working and advocating, and sometimes you get tired of fighting, and because so much opposition comes against you and so many things are going against you. And with the work that I'm doing, I've had some challenges, I've had some resistance, I've had a lot of things going. And this book, it's something I keep on me, something I refer back to often, and it's just a great book. Even when you feel like you're tired of fighting, it's a great book to pick back up and read the things that I've highlighted and tabs on and continue to read over and over in my head. One of the things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to read some of the things that I've highlighted in this book. And the first thing I highlighted is on page 14 of the book. And it says, no matter the size of your opponent, you must know and understand the focus and determination you contain will become your greatest asset to taking him down and accomplishing what most people probably said couldn't be done. I've been focused, I've been determined, and I've had some challenges, and I've overcome a lot of challenges in advocating for myself as well as advocating for others. And SWGA Sickle Cell Awareness is doing a lot in the community, and it's so important. It's interesting sometimes that some people be like, well, Monica, you're a patient, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And my first thought is always, if I don't do it, so who's going to do it for the sickle cell community in this area? I'm a patient and a patient advocate, and it's so important that people know in the Southwest Georgia region what the needs are for the sickle cell patients here. I'm not just advocating for myself, I'm advocating for a lot of people. And it's a work that's needed, and I'm glad I'm here and able to do it. Another thing that he talks about in this book that I think is so important, and this resonated with me for so many reasons. And this is coming from page 23 in the book, and it says, the separation of talent and skill is one of the most misunderstood concepts for people who are trying to excel, who have dreams, and who want to accomplish their goals. Talent is something you have naturally. Skill is only developed by hours and hours and hours of working on your craft. That resonated with me so much for so many reasons, because it's interesting that people don't see the hours and hours and hours and hours I sit and do a lot of research. I do a lot of research on the different types of sickle cell, different types of cures for sickle cell, treatment options, and I go to a lot of seminars, I go to a lot of training, I go to a lot of workshops, I go to a lot of webinars, and I sit and listen to veterans in the field, I listen to medical professionals in the field that develop my knowledge. Especially my greatest asset is my network. My medical team answer all the questions that I have, and sometimes they give me advice, especially when I ask for advice, because a lot of times I do need advice explaining stuff to some patients or to the patient's family. And it's like the biggest thing that's come up, not just in my community, but a lot of communities, a lot of people ask questions about the trait, the sickle cell trait. Well, Monica, I have the trait. Is there a big deal to the sickle cell trait? And the interesting thing about having the trait that people don't know or they don't realize is if you don't manage the trait, it shows up like the disease. So you still have to take some precautions, even having the sickle cell trait. And there are some people that feel like, well, I have the trait, it's not a big deal, but I recommend that you still be knowledgeable of it. And also, if two people with the trait get together, chances are you're going to have a child with the disease. So that's something else to consider as well when you're dealing with the trait. And when the signs show up, make sure you take precaution, especially if you're fatigued, dehydrated. And sometimes with the trait, you can also have other health issues. That's another thing that I always bring to people's attention. You have the trait and you have diabetes. You have the trait and you have heart disease. You have the trait, you have other stuff, and it's just stuff that you have to look at all together as a whole and not just the trait itself. So I think that's very important, and that also comes from developing my skill of being a patient advocate, because the goal is always to be an effective patient advocate, not just for myself but for others, and being able to explain what the needs are. Another thing that's in this book that just so that was said on, and it was so important because it wasn't just me, and I get this statement a lot when I'm advocating, and it's on page 25 of the book. It says, in a sense, perfecting your craft gives others the perceptions of your success happening without much effort. I'm going to read that again. In a sense, perfecting your craft give others the perception of your success happening without much effort. I get that a lot. That's something I get a lot, where it's like, well, Monica, you make it look easy, and you just say stuff that you spit off the top of your tongue like it's so easy, but it comes from years and years of research and studying and meeting with patients and meeting with patient family members, loved ones, caregivers, meeting with so many people. I'm constantly talking, constantly learning, constantly reading, constantly networking, and I do a lot of health fairs. So that's another thing that helps me with my craft. I get a lot of questions when I do health fairs, whether they're in Albany, whether in Blakely, whether they're in Thomasville, in the 14 counties I serve. Even when I travel, even when I'm traveling for vacation, sometimes people will still ask me questions like, what do you do? And I'll tell people I'm a patient and a patient advocate for sickle cell. And sometimes I've been on vacation where somebody actually asked me, how do you know you have sickle cell? They was like, I know you didn't come on vacation to ask me. This was one of the girls at the hotel desk, and she was like, well, how do you know that you have sickle cell? I said, one of the signs of a sickle cell patient is extreme fatigue, jaundice in the eyes, having anemia. It's so many different things that you can look at, but fatigueness is a big one, anemia is a big one, jaundice is a big one, and but if you feel a certain way, my recommendation is always you talk to your medical professional. Talk to your family doctor, primary care physician, or internal medicine doctor. I'm not a doctor. I make sure I put that disclaimer out there all the time. I'm a patient. I'm a patient advocate. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a licensed medical professional. So I'm careful about the information that I give out. So I always emphasize that I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm a patient advocate. And I just share information, and I share other people's information that have experienced the same things that the person I'm talking to have experienced, and I refer them to first their medical professional, and I'll refer them to other resources. Another thing that stood out in this book is on page 65, and it's about the heart. And I think this is the biggest thing that keep me going even when I don't feel like going. And it says, together, the brain and heart complements one another because they are both needed to get you to the next level. One provides the creative oxygen needed to breathe your goal into manifestation, while the other pumps motivation and ambition to complete it. I like that because people ask me all the time, well, Monica, where did the idea of Come Hub With Us comes from? The idea of Come Hub With Us comes from talking to different people that have loved ones that have sickle cell, and there's like, well, what do I do? First of all, I always recommend people, you need to know who their team is, their medical team is, their doctor, their specialist, their nurse, their social worker. You need to know their team. That's very important, because they can answer some questions and they'll know more into detail each case by case, and your social worker help you get the things that you can't get on your own. Another thing I came up with that's been so prevalent in the sickle cell community, that's being talked about a lot more, especially with a lot of patients transitioning. I don't like to use the word death, I use the word transition. And the complications of sickle cell. And one of the persons I advocate with that is no longer with us, that was his biggest thing. He would always say, Monica, people don't die from sickle cell, they die from the complications of sickle cell. So, and that's another thing that I advocate heavily on. And I'm excited and I'm thankful that Jordan Sparks is doing the Generation S campaign for people to tell their stories. And she talked about her sister, and a couple of interviews she's also talked about the fact that her sister didn't die from sickle cell itself, but she died from the complications of it. She didn't go into any details about it, but it's something that emphasize and highlight again, a lot of patients don't just die from sickle cell itself, they die from the complications of sickle cell. And because I'm a football fan, I love sports, I created a play sheet. I created a play sheet with some of the top complications of sickle cell, and it's entitled This Game Plan for Sickle Cell. And it talks about having pain crisis, anemia, deep vein thrombosis, acute chest syndrome. A lot of patients have infections. They have diabetes, strokes. All of those are complications of sickle cell. And all of that's on that play sheet. And it's something that I came with that was inspired because I'm a sports fan. Dallas Cowboys, DC for L. So that sheet was for that, and that's another thing that I was being creative about. So another thing I'm going to highlight that's in this book that I think is so important, I highlighted and read a lot again, because it's something to think about when you're going through. This is on page 89 of the book, and it says, when I think about what pressure creates, I think of a beautiful diamond and the pressure it takes to form something so beautiful, astonishing, and extravagant. A piece of coal endures extreme temperature and force, which causes the diamond to form. The most fascinating treasure in this world has encountered levels of pressure you can't possibly imagine. And that's interesting, because a lot of people that are out there doing things and succeeding and building businesses and building nonprofits, you go through things. Advocating, you go through things, and you go through pressure. You go through so many things. And I like how he used the analogy of the diamond. A lot of people wear a diamond, sometimes not knowing everything that diamond went through to get to be a part of your earrings, your necklace, your jewelry, or whatever. That is so important to know. And another thing that he talks about that I think is very important, and it's something that's on my personal Facebook page, and he talks about, it's on page 129 of the book, and it says, all I had to do was recognize my gift, plant the seed. I'm going to read that again. Plant the seed, cultivate it, and then reap the harvest of the work I produce. That's so important. I talk about seeds all the time. If you've ever really sat down and talked to me, I always talk about life is about seeds. Whatever seeds you put out are the seeds you get back. Good seeds, bad seeds, indifferent seeds, whatever you put out is what you get back. And I know I sow into a lot of organizations, so organizations sow back into me. I help a lot of people, so people help me. I support people support me. And it's so important to think about that. When you're doing something, everything you do is a seed. Words that you say, money that you sow, the things that you say. And sometimes people talk about people, and then when somebody talk about you, then you're upset. And you should think, didn't I just talk about somebody? Then some people go through different things, not realizing that's a seed you sowed. Sometimes the seed come back the same day, sometimes it come back later, but the seed will come back. So that's why a lot of times I'm careful as to what I say, what I do, who I sow into, what I sow into. I'm strategic in what I sow into, because that is so important. You have to be careful as the seeds that you sow. You sow discord, you get discord back. You sow love, you get love back. You sow support, you get support back. And the Bible also talks about in order to gain a friend, you first have to be friendly. So I have friends because I'm a friendly person. I try not to sow discord. I try not to sow certain things because I don't want those seeds back. So, and I'm going to, the last page of the book is so important because it's also the title of the book. So I'm going to conclude with this. It's on page 130 of the book, and it says, "The fight in you is too significant to let go." And that is so true. That is so true. Sometimes when I'm fighting, I take a break, I rest. I don't let it go. I take a break, I rest, I regroup, I rethink, I re-strategize, but I don't let go. SWGA Sickle Cell Awareness was created with a purpose and for a purpose. It was created to talk about and highlight what sickle cell is. There are a lot of people that living with sickle cell and they don't want to share their story. I understand that, and not everybody's going to want to share their story. Not everybody's going to want to advocate for sickle cell, and I'm okay with that. But I know that I need to share my story because my story is unique. It is different. I'm thankful every day because I'm 45 and I have sickle cell. Not only do I have sickle cell beta thalassemia, I also have congestive heart failure. There are a lot of patients who don't make it to the age of 45, so every day I get up and I'm thankful. I'm thankful, and I'm thankful that I was diagnosed at the age of 38. At least I was living when I was diagnosed. Some people, they don't find out that they're diagnosed until it's too late. So I'm thankful, and that's another reason why I share my story often. And my godmother always said, "Monica, everywhere you go, you tell your story." So I'm also supported by my godmother, my friends, and my family. Monica, every opportunity you get, you tell your story because your story is unique. And you never know who your story is going to help. And also on my table, I don't have it with me now, but I usually, and I think it's on my Facebook page, but I have a picture of a lady that's this year she'll be 94 with sickle cell, and she's in Nigeria, Africa. And I'll look at her picture a lot of times. I'm looking away from the camera because I'm trying to find this picture that I know it's on my page, and I know people have seen this picture of the lady that's 90. This year is 94 with sickle cell, living in Nigeria, Africa, with sickle cell. She has sickle cell disease, and that's another inspiring story. So it's important for me to tell my story because you never know who you're helping. While I'm out there in the field, sometimes people don't understand why I do what I do. I do what I do because I'm a patient myself. So I'm on both sides. I'm a patient and a patient advocate. So I see how patients are treated, and that's why I advocate the way that I do. That is so important to me. And thank you, Marz, again for writing your story. Thank you for again, because the book, The Fight in You, the hashtag The Fight in You is a great book. It's an inspiring book. Another thing about that book that I share, and I promise you this time I'm going to close out, is it's a beautiful thing to hear a man share his story. A lot of women share their stories, their sickle cell stories. It's not as many men that share their story. It's more women that share their story than men. So that was another thing that made me grasp to this book, because it's the story from a male's perspective. Because I'm not a male. I think that's great, but the book has no gender on it. Whether you're male or female, it's a great book to to read. It's a great book to refer back to. So thank you, Marz, for sharing your story, and I know you continue to do great work in the sickle cell community. You continue to do a lot of work, and I'm so thankful that you shared your story. Until next time, I'm your patient advocate, Monica, and you all have an awesome day. Stay well and stay hydrated. Thank you. Bye.